Everyone, what an amazing day. I've just finished up photographing a beautiful great gray owl. I've been in this area for a few days now and I've been able to photograph it a number of times, and it has just been magnificent. Such a fun trip being out here in this forest. Each time I pass through it, it just amazes me with how beautiful it is out here. I absolutely love it. You know, those great gray owls, they can actually be quite difficult to photograph as they move from tree to tree, as they fly behind trees. One moment they're absolutely still, and the next they just burst into action. And so it can be quite difficult to photograph them at times. Any wildlife really can be difficult to photograph, especially if you're trying to get images of action, whether it's birds in flight or some fox kits wrestling around. It can be difficult to photograph that stuff, especially if you're not practiced or if it's been a while since you've been out with your camera last. So in this week's video, I wanted to go over some of the photography exercises that I like to practice to keep my skills honed, to just stay practiced so that each time I go out to photograph wildlife, I'm ready to go and I'm not relearning my settings, or I'm not having a overly difficult time keeping the animal and the viewfinder and the frame. And these are exercises that you can do at home. You don't actually need wildlife in front of you, but they will help with your wildlife photography. These exercises are especially good if you can't make it out often. If it's been a while since you've been out with an animal and you're getting ready to go out and photograph them again, these are exercises that should help you, and hopefully you can practice regularly to just be ready for when the action does happen. So let's jump right into it. If you're familiar at all with wildlife photography, you know that the first rule for the animals that we're photographing is that the second you take the viewfinder, take the camera away from your eye to check on a previous image you've taken or to adjust or check some settings, that animal is going to do exactly what you've been waiting for it to do, and you're going to miss your shot. It's going to move and do some awesome thing that you've been waiting for it to do. That's pretty much the first rule for wildlife photography. That's happened to all of us. It's happened to me more times than I care to admit. So one of the exercises that I like practicing most, and you can do this wherever you are, you don't need wildlife in front of you, is to be able to change all of the critical settings on your camera while looking through the viewfinder. So for example, I need to be able to change the shutter speed, the aperture, the ISO, the white balance, and change my focus points without ever lowering the camera from my eye. These are all settings that are critical when you're taking images of wildlife, to be able to change the exposure, different things like that when photographing wildlife. If conditions start to change, or if you want to change the look of your image, these are all settings that you need to have memorized while looking through the viewfinder. If you need to lower your camera to see where the buttons are, to change your settings, to get into a menu, to access settings, if there's any reason you need to lower that viewfinder from your eye when you're focused on wildlife, then your settings need to be changed. You need to set up custom buttons. You need to make things easier for you to access when that camera is up against your eye. You need to always be ready to take that picture whenever that animal moves, because it will move. As soon as you take that camera away from your eye, that animal is going to move. That's just kind of like the first rule that wildlife have with us humans for some reason. Not only should you be able to change these settings without taking your eye away from the camera, you should be able to do so quickly, and ultimately you need to get to the point where you can do it without thinking. You shouldn't have to think about, oh, where is that button I need to push again to access my shooting modes? What about the white balance? How do I change my ISO? Which dial is it that alters the shutter speed versus the aperture? Different things like that. You should be able to access those settings, to change those settings without thinking about it whatsoever. As soon as you recognize a need, as soon as you recognize something that you need to change, you should just be able to do it right away. So this is something you can practice as often as you want, really, and just memorize where those settings are on your camera. As a small kid, I was obsessed with Western movies. I always loved watching John Wayne and Clint Eastwood. All those old movies were so much fun. There was something in those movies called the quick draw, and that's when the cowboy would draw his gun as quickly as he could and hit his target. That's something as a kid I would always practice with my toy gun. I'd see how fast I could draw it, and of course, I always hit my target. Now that's something I still practice today, actually. Not with the toy gun, well, usually not with the toy gun, but with my camera. So what I do is I'll pick a target, something small usually, and once I've picked that target, I'll raise my camera and see how long it takes me to find that through the viewfinder. This is a very good exercise for being able to find a subject, especially smaller subjects like birds or small mammals, anything like that. It'll really come in handy. This exercise is really good to practice, and you can do it really anywhere. Out in your yard, pick a branch on a tree or a flower on the ground, something like that. And for starters, start all the way zoomed out. It'll make it a lot easier. Look for your target, and once you start getting good at that, to make it harder, you can zoom all the way in, find maybe even a smaller target, and see how long it takes you to find that. And to get even harder, look up in the sky, find an airplane with just blue sky around it. That way there's no clouds to reference off of or anything like that. Once you've picked your target, see how long it takes you to find it. Again, this is an exercise that will really help you out in the field to be able to find those small subjects that you're hoping to photograph. And this is a exercise that, again, you can practice really anywhere you need to. It's one that I highly recommend, and one that's helped me immensely in my wildlife photography. Something very similar to this exercise that you can do, and you can do it pretty much anywhere, is exercise of tracking moving subjects. So again, very similar. Get some sort of moving subject. If you've got a local duck pond, or go down to the beach with all the seagulls flying around, whatever it is, just go down there, find your subject, and just practice tracking it in your viewfinder. Even if you're not taking any pictures, obviously the pictures will help because you'll be able to see afterwards if you were exposed correctly, if you were actually focused where you wanted to be focused. But this is something you can practice at home as well if you don't have a local duck pond or anything like that. If you've got a dog, you know, throw the ball with it, and when it's running to get it, see how well you can find and focus on that dog. And even take a few pictures, make sure they're in focus and all that. Or if you have any kids, just let them run around the yard and take some pictures of them as they're running and playing. Just make sure they're your own kids, please. And, you know, see if you can follow them with all their sporadic movements. That's something that I like doing at home with my son. Sometimes we'll go out and play in the yard, and we'll just run around, and I'll tell him, you know, just be as challenging as you can. Go run around and jump around sporadically, change directions, and I'll see if I can stay focused on him. And this is an exercise that has really helped me, especially in a scenario like I have here with this great gray owl, where it might change directions suddenly, or it might fly behind a grove of trees and come out on the other side. I'm able to track it while it's in movement, and it really, really helps with bird photography or action photography in general. These are just some of the exercises that I practice on a regular basis to help me with my wildlife photography, to help me hone different skills that I'm hoping to develop and improve, and it really has helped me over the years. Initially, when I started with wildlife photography, it was something I wasn't able to do as regularly as I am now. When I first picked up the camera and went out to photograph wildlife, I was lucky if I was able to do so once or twice a month, if that. And I found it really hard when I did find an animal that I wanted to photograph. I found it difficult to get the images that I was wanting, especially those action images. The birds in flight or the foxes wrestling around, whatever it was. I had a really hard time with those action images because I wasn't practiced. I wasn't getting out enough in order to practice enough. So I came up with these exercises exercises that I've talked to you about today, and they really helped me with my photography. It's helped me get to the point where it's so much easier to find and photograph a bird in flight or an animal running around, whatever it is. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's definitely easier than it was. And so I highly recommend that you do these exercises or come up with your own exercises that will help you be ready to capture the action of the actual wildlife you're hoping to photograph when that time comes. There have been times the last few days as I've been photographing this great gray owl where it's been extremely difficult. You know, with the sporadic movements, he would fly behind these clusters of trees and come out somewhere where I wasn't expecting him. But because of these exercises, it made it a lot easier for me to be able to find him again in my viewfinder, to find him quickly and be able to get some images before he dipped behind another cluster of trees. So again, just to reiterate, I highly recommend that you practice these exercises or come up with some of your own that will help you in your wildlife photography. You know, I would love to hear from you guys. I learned so much from you guys in the comments, from the emails that you send me, all the awesome input that you have. I would love to learn from you guys. What are some of the exercises that you do when you can't be in front of wildlife all the time? Ideally, we would all just have some awesome wild creature in front of our lens all the time. But we know how that is. It doesn't happen that way. So I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the exercises in between encounters that you do to make sure your skills are honed? Do you exercise or have any exercises that you do? If so, what are they? Are they different from the ones that I've talked about today? I would love to hear from you guys and learn from you guys. So please let me know in the comments below. Always feel free to shoot me an email as well. I love hearing from you guys. Just wanted to remind you that my 2023 wildlife calendars are now available for order. I had so much fun putting these together, and I'd be so grateful if you picked one up for yourself or picked a couple up for your friends or your loved ones just in time for the new year sneaking up on us. Again, I had so much fun putting these together, and I want to thank those of you who have already ordered one or some. It really helps me out so much. I appreciate the support and hope you guys enjoy them. Thank you so much for following along this week. I hope you've enjoyed these tips. Again, I'd love to hear from you, so let me know what you think in the comments below. Stay safe out there, you guys, and we'll see you next time.